Okay, we are going to talk about some tough stuff today. And so I want to discuss these laws from the book of Deuteronomy, some of the laws that rattle our bones. This is always a difficult time, and actually it's been interesting for me over the years to watch college students and to see you folks pride yourselves in diversity and tolerance. Are diversity and tolerance your two major ethical principles of the 21st century? Diversity and tolerance. And so therefore, can you tolerate all sorts of things? Person, how should I say, you use this in days gone by, things would be considered really immoral, and now, a guy sleeps with a girl, and what happens? It's just like no big deal, right? I mean, it happens all the time. No big deal. It happens on television. It happens on movies. It happens in real life. No big deal. And yet, years ago, that was a huge deal. Okay? However, in our culture, if you say the wrong things and you use the wrong words, you get crucified. You absolutely get crucified. And so now, we're so into tolerance but yet does our tolerance lead to intolerance? And what I'm suggesting to you is that all this emphasis on tolerance and diversity has actually led to intolerance in various things. So for example, at the Catholic University down in Washington, D.C., there's some Muslim students taking Catholic courses at the Catholic University. These Muslim students said that they are offended by Jesus on a cross, and that, at a Catholic university, they actually have crosses with Jesus on the cross. These Muslim students are offended by that, and they want them taken down because they're offensive to them. Now, question, is this going to go to like an American court, and they're going to decide whether a Catholic school has the right to put a crucifix up? Is there something wrong with this picture? When was the last time you were in a mosque and you told them that you were offended and you want a cross in the mosque? See what happens to you, okay? So what I'm saying is that we've become so, it's crazy. Everything's upside down. Now, what's the problem? You guys now have to go back 3,000 years. Question, is our culture got all sorts of stuff that's changed in the last 50 years? Now you go back 3,000 years, and you're going to see law codes from 3,000 years ago. Are we really out of sync with how they think about things back then? And what happens is, the irony to me is that as Americans in the 21st century, are we really judgmental when we look back and say, how could they do those things? We're so cruel and things. And we look back on these people as barbarians and things. And it's kind of ironic that we sit in judgment, yet we're supposed to be so tolerant. Did you see the irony there? We're supposed to be so tolerant. What I'm going to show you is some things that are pretty hard to understand. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, I struggle with some of these things till this day. I'm not sure I got an answer for all these things. But they're things that I think I should put out on the table, and hopefully some of you guys, 10 years from now, you guys are really smart and stuff. You figure it out. You give me an email and tell me what the answer is on some of this stuff. But we'll work with some of these laws. These are laws from the book of Deuteronomy that rattle our bones. Okay, they clash with our culture. They clash with our mindset. They clash with how we think about things. And some of those laws have to do with war. Particularly in the book of Joshua, we'll discuss the concept of war in the book of Joshua more, but we'll kind of introduce it here. I'll introduce some of the hard stuff. We'll actually drop it. We won't actually work with it until we get to fully in the book of Joshua. Joshua's a lot of battles, right? Joshua, the Battle of Jericho, that kind of thing. So law wars, okay? So if you go to Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 4, there's a whole section here of laws for war. By the way, are there laws for war in our world today? Is anybody familiar with the Geneva Convention? Things like that. There are ways, fair ways of doing things and non-fair ways. Are there certain ways? Do we protect prisoners of war, for example? Are prisoners of war protected? In some contexts they are. Other contexts they are not. But anyways, in our culture. Here's some laws that come out of Deuteronomy chapter 20 then. It says in verse 4, "For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies." Okay? And then down verse 4, "The officers shall say to the army, 'Has anyone built a new house? Has anyone built a new house and not dedicated it yet? Let him go home. Let him go home.'" In other words, if you build a house and you haven't dedicated, you haven't lived in it and things like that, you're to go home. Is that a good law? If a person goes to war and they just built a house, where's their head going to be? Are they going to be back in their house that they've never lived in? And they're going to go out to fight a battle. Is their head going to be really into it, or are their head going to be back there? So God says, hey, if you've just built a house, you've never lived in it, never dedicated it and stuff, go back home. Live in your house and then let others fight and stuff. We would call that, does anybody remember back after the Civil War, they had a war called Vietnam. And in Vietnam days, they drafted students and things. So I was a college student and things, and you got a number. I forget, I was in the 230s or something like that. So it meant that I was in the 230s, I would not be drafted. If you got a low number, suppose your number was 10, were you history, were you drafted in the Army, whether you liked it or not, out of college, boom. So what do you do then? Well, you get married. And if you get married, did you get a deferment? I think his name was Dick Cheney? Okay. Anyways, you get a deferment, and you get a deferment. I say that because you Dick Cheney is kind of Darth Vader and stuff. Actually, he's one of my heroes. I say that just to get in your face a little bit. Actually, you need to listen to some of Cheney's lectures. There's some brilliant things, actually, despite how the culture thinks about him. But anyway, so if you have a house, and then a second rule comes up, it says there's a marriage exemption. In other words, if you're engaged to a woman, and you're in the process of getting married with her, question, are you supposed to go off to war? No, okay? By the way, what's the problem? If a guy goes off to war and his head's on his wife that's home, is he going to get killed out in war because his head's not in the war? And things. So, and by the way, even in America in the 1960s and 70s, with the Vietnam thing, was there a deferment for somebody that was married? You got a deferment, okay? A deferment that you get a year off or something like that. The Bible has it. Now, by the way, do these laws make sense to us? These laws make sense to us, and so these fit in pretty well. Not all the war laws do. Give peace a chance. All I am saying is, give peace a chance. Okay, I saw somebody smile, at least he knows. Anyways, old song from the 70s, actually, give peace a chance. This is Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 10. It says, when you march up to attack a city, make its people an offer of shalom. Make an offer when you come up to attack a city, offer the city shalom, offer the city peace. If they accept and open their gates, all their people in it shall be subject and forced to labor and shall work for you. And basically they'd be, like woodcutters and water bearers for you and things. And basically you spare the city. Okay? So this, again, give peace a chance kind of thing before. Now, by the way, when you guys read Joshua, did they ever do this? Did you ever remember reading them? They come up to the city and says, hey, peace, baby, peace, come out and stuff. And you can, it's never recorded. Now, by the way, just because it's not recorded, does that mean that they didn't do it? No, they did a lot of things that aren't recorded. And so it's possible they did this, but it's never really recorded and things. So that brings me to another point that I want to make. In the book of Deuteronomy, are there a lot of things said that there's no record that they actually did these things? Okay? So I'm saying, is it possible they had laws that they actually didn't do? Question, in America, do we have laws that nobody does? Okay, shake your head, yes. Okay, the answer is yeah, we've got tons of them, okay? And actually some of them now, that the people saying, even the government itself says we choose not to enforce these laws. There are laws in the book, and the government says we choose not to enforce them. So give peace a chance. All I am saying is give peace a chance, okay? Now, those are the easy ones. This one's a hard one. It's called the harem principle, and this is down in chapter 20, verse 17. Harem, it's pronounced harem. It's a hard H, okay? It's a harem. Harem. Harem means total destruction. It means, actually, let me go back one step. It actually means devoted to the Lord. It means devoted to the Lord, but how you devoted it to the Lord was by burning it up and killing everything in the city. Men, women, children, and animals. The whole city, totally destroyed. By the way, did they ever do this? Destroy a whole city? Men, women, children, and stuff. What was the name of one of the cities they did that to? Jericho. When they went into Jericho, by the way, did they spare somebody in Jericho? Yeah, Rahab the harlot got spared, but was the rest of the people in the town killed? Okay? So this harem principle is really, really hard for us as Americans. You say, holy cow, they go in there and kill men, women, and children and stuff. Holy cow, how do you do that, you know? Okay, is this a hard one? Is this a hard one? Men, women, and children, and animals. Dedicated to the Lord, burned up, and the various things killed by the sword and stuff like that, the animals and stuff. Somebody asked, you know, how do you account for, you know, these soldiers going in and killing babies, killing everybody in the town and things like that? The honest truth is, I don't know what the answer to this one is. It's bothered me some. I've got certain things, and when we get into the book of Joshua, we'll try to do certain explanations for it. But still I'm left with, this is really harsh. But what do you do? Did America ever do anything like this? Well, actually, we dropped a bomb, and did it destroy every man, woman, and children too, and things. So, you know what I'm saying? So I don't want you guys to think as 21st century Americans that you're above all this stuff and these are cruel barbarians and stuff. Actually, a lot of people got killed when the atomic bomb went off, right? Men, women, and children, everything, animals, everything, etc. Now, by the way, that's bad. I mean, we don't want to be dropping bombs all the time and things, but they did that in order to spare lives, right? Because if they hadn't done it, there were how many more people would have died, and et cetera, et cetera. And I don't want to get into the justification of all this stuff. Part of it is the justification of war. And part of it is when you're in America and you're sitting in a college academic setting, question, do we in the academic setting, we're always doing what? Peace and love and things like that. Because what? Do we have to actually get out there and do the fighting? No, we have somebody else do it for us, and then we want to sit back in our academy with our brilliance and tell them what they should be doing, while they're actually the ones that have to do it, okay? Do you want me, what I'm trying to do is, do you see the arrogance of the academic position? Do you see the arrogance of the academic position? And what I'm saying is be careful that you don't think you got everything figured out, but you never had to pull a gun and actually put a bead on somebody, okay? It's a very different thing than what you'd imagine. So I'm saying is be careful about the academic arrogance here. Now, this is really hard. The other question I come up with is, you know, was God judging this Canaanite culture? Was God judging that culture? Was God judging that culture? Yes, he was judging. He tells it that waited 400 years. He said the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And he waited 400 years. And then, boom, he sends Israel in to do this judgment on this culture. Does God judge cultures? Does God judge cultures? Ask Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, does God judge cultures? Yes, he does, okay? Now he's using the Israelites to do that. You say, but what happens to all these people? I don't know what happens when an infant gets killed. What happens on the other side? In other words, am I a finite human being? Do I understand how the God works? Do I understand how? Can I sit in judgment on God? I was just asked, how do you justify God doing that? I don't justify God. Does God justify me? Okay? I can't justify God because I don't understand all this stuff. What happens? I know what goes on in life and things, but what happens after life? Is it possible these babies that are killed go to heaven and things are better for them? Who knows? I don't know what happens afterwards to all these situations. And so I'm saying is I can't make a judgment on that other than I say, I trust God. I trust God. So there's certain points in which you got to back down. There's certain points, and partially what I like putting these laws up there is because I want to kind of break your heads open. Okay? And in other words, to give you stuff that you can't put God in your nice little, God loves you and has a wonderful plan for your life and stuff. These kind of laws break your head open on that and say, wait a minute, God's beyond my understanding. I can't understand. My thing is, I can't understand my wife. How can I say I'm going to understand God? You know what I'm saying? I can't understand another person sometimes really close. How can I say that I understand all the why God does this and how God administrates it? Can God administer things on the other side of death that I have no idea about? Can God administer stuff on the other side of death that I have no idea about? So I can't make a judgment necessarily here on God when I don't have the whole picture. I have nowhere to make a real judgment on that. So these harem laws are really hard, though. The whole thing is devoted to the Lord, burned up to the Lord. Israel didn't do that a whole lot. They did it on Jericho, they did it on Ai, and I think Hatzor. There were 3 cities they did it on, but they did it on 3. And so this is a big deal. This is usually a hard one for Americans, for 21st century people to get a hold of. We'll talk about it. We'll come back to the harem when we actually see it in Joshua. Joshua will actually implement it, so we'll come back to that one. That's a tough one. Now,